don't alienate half of the country when you're putting out a product meant to appeal to all. It's the Michael Jordan Republicans buy sneakers too. It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke. Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some GI weird generated version of them.
She's now bragging about the success of Snow White, which is a movie that's going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, and mainly because of her and because nobody wanted to support her.
There was an in-depth piece, like a behind-the-scenes piece, talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now. Said she hated Snow White, mocked the fact that there was a prince and that she falls in love as opposed to leaning into her own power. We could go on. They postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable.
Welcome back to Pop Flash, where the drama never sleeps and the scandals just keep getting messier. And today's headline, Megyn Kelly has had enough. According to rumors, she just obliterated Rachel Zegler on national television. And it's not just over bad acting or poor interviews. It's about everything. From the shocking behind-the-scenes chaos, to Disney's year-long delay, to Zegler's unapologetic feminism, anti-fairy tale rants, and awkward public meltdowns, Megyn Kelly is calling it all out. And she's not holding back at all. But how did it get this bad? Why is Rachel Zegler being blamed for one of Disney's biggest PR disasters in recent years? And is it true that insiders say the Snow White remake is already doomed? All thanks to one star's behavior? Stick around, because what you're about to hear will make your jaw drop.
For every one of the 18 hours I am in the Snow White dress, I expect to get paid. If it's 18 hours, I want 18 hours of pay. I'm sure she got underpaid as a Disney lead actress. They've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now, and how they had her tweet out like a little, "Yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her."
It was supposed to be Disney's next big moment, an updated classic that would enchant a whole new generation. But instead of magic and nostalgia, all anyone could talk about was one thing, Rachel Zegler, and not for the right reasons. The trouble began when Zegler took center stage, not just as the face of Snow White, but as the voice of a new rewritten narrative. In multiple interviews, she confidently dismissed the original 1937 film that launched the Disney empire. "It's weird," she said with a smirk. "The prince is a stalker," she laughed in another. And then came the dagger. "This is not 1937 anymore," she declared, adding that her version of Snow White would be about a woman who doesn't need a man, doesn't dream about true love, and certainly doesn't want to be rescued. According to rumors, these comments didn't just raise eyebrows. They ignited a full-blown cultural firestorm. Across social media platforms, lifelong Disney fans were stunned. They didn't understand. Why would the lead actress of a Disney remake openly mock the very story she was cast to honor? Why would she attack the foundation of a tale that had shaped childhoods for decades? Disney had promised a modern reimagining, but no one expected this level of detachment from the original magic. Rachel Zegler wasn't simply offering a new spin, she was tearing down a legacy, and fans felt it like a punch in the gut. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, within hours, they were all flooded with clips of her interviews.
So she just encapsulates everything that most of us cannot stand about modern day feminism and the left in general. People have real problems and no one gives a if she got paid for 17 instead of 18 on her multi-million-dollar salary, which is not calculated by the hour. This weird feminist thing where her heroine cannot be in love or be saved by a man, the prince, that she's more focused on becoming the leader she was meant to be, as if women in modern day America must make that choice.
The tone was clear. Zegler wasn't just playing Snow White. She was rewriting her, replacing the fantasy with feminism, substituting wonder with wokeness, and audiences weren't having it. She doesn't even like the movie she's in, one viral tweet said, garnering over 1 million views in a single day. Another user wrote, "This isn't empowerment, it's arrogance." The backlash wasn't coming from trolls or fringe groups. It was coming from families, Disney lovers, adults who grew up on the classic and wanted to share it with their kids. According to rumors, even inside Disney, the tension was beginning to grow. And here's the kicker. Zegler didn't stop. She didn't apologize. She didn't walk it back. In fact, according to insiders, she doubled down. At one press event, she joked again that the prince was creepy. In another, she emphasized that Snow White's story had never made sense to her, and that this new version would be about power, independence, and leadership. Now let's pause here. On paper, that sounds admirable, but when you're taking Snow White, a tale rooted in innocence, friendship, and love, and you publicly tear it apart, people take notice, and not in a good way. What Disney had failed to understand, rumors say, is that Snow White wasn't just a cartoon, she was a symbol, the first ever Disney princess, the beginning of it all. And when Rachel Zegler, with her smug delivery and sarcastic tone, appeared to roll her eyes at the very story she was starring in, it felt like a betrayal. Fans began to question everything. Why was she cast if she didn't respect the role? Why was the studio backing someone who seemed to be actively sabotaging their own legacy? Petitions started surfacing. Hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite began trending, and YouTube commentators, both on the left and right, started dissecting every interview, every quote, every eyebrow raise Zegler made. Meanwhile, Disney's PR team was scrambling. According to rumors, emergency meetings were held. Internal emails leaked suggesting that the studio was re-evaluating its messaging strategy. But the damage had already been done, and it was only getting worse. You see, this wasn't just about a movie anymore. This was a cultural moment. Rachel Zegler had unknowingly become the face of everything fans feared Disney was turning into: political, preachy, and out of touch. And once that perception took root, it spread like wildfire. Behind the scenes, insiders say studio executives began to worry, not just about ticket sales, but about brand loyalty. Could Disney recover from this? Could Snow White survive the storm? Or had Rachel Zegler single-handedly sunk the entire project? And here's where things take an even darker turn. Because just when you thought the backlash had peaked, Rachel made it worse. Just when it seemed like the controversy couldn't get any worse, Rachel Zegler struck again. She was handed a golden opportunity to dial things down, reconnect with the audience, and maybe, just maybe, repair the damage. Instead, according to rumors, she did the opposite, amplifying the chaos, defying expectations, and plunging the film into even deeper waters. In a new round of interviews meant to promote the project, Zegler doubled down yet again, this time with even more fire in her tone. She insisted that the original Snow White was offensive, that the idea of a woman waiting for a man to rescue her was dangerous messaging, and that young girls needed something radically different. And the backlash? It exploded. This time, it wasn't just a few fans on Twitter. Entire communities, including longtime Disney loyalists, started pushing back. Video essays dissecting her interviews flooded YouTube. Reddit threads analyzing her statements hit the front page. Parents expressed genuine concern over whether the remake was still appropriate for children. The anger wasn't abstract anymore. It was personal. According to rumors, some parents who had grown up with Disney classics were now refusing to take their own children to the new Snow White film. And the reasoning wasn't about race or politics or modern storytelling. It was about attitude. They didn't want to support a film that, in their eyes, had become bitter, sarcastic, and joyless. And then came the worst part. Behind the scenes, according to whispers from Disney insiders, things were going off the rails. It wasn't just the public who were turning on Zegler. The studio itself was allegedly starting to panic. Rumors say that marketing teams were instructed to cut down her screen time in future trailers. Posters that once featured her face prominently were quietly revised. Some promotional interviews canceled. Some red carpet appearances never scheduled. Behind closed doors, executives were reportedly scrambling to regain control of a film that was spinning out into a PR nightmare. And then the delays started. Originally scheduled for a 2024 release, Disney abruptly pushed the film back an entire year, to March 2025. The official reason was production delays, but according to industry insiders, that was a cover-up. The real reason? Damage control. According to rumors, Disney needed time to regroup. They were re-editing footage, rethinking their promotional strategy. Some even claimed that entire scenes were reshot or removed entirely, just to downplay Rachel Zegler's presence, because by now, her name had become toxic, and the pressure wasn't just coming from the fans. Inside the production, things were starting to unravel. According to multiple whispers from set insiders, Rachel was difficult to work with. She allegedly clashed with co-star Gal Gadot, sometimes refusing to speak to her between takes. She skipped photo shoots, walked out of promotional events, created a storm wherever she went. One crew member reportedly said, "It felt like we were walking on eggshells, like the whole project revolved around avoiding a meltdown." And here's where it gets even messier. Not long after Disney released a small teaser for the film, Rachel posted something on her personal social media, a short but pointed Free Palestine message, just hours after the teaser dropped. According to rumors, the post infuriated Disney executives. It wasn't about the politics, it was about timing. Why would the lead actress of a billion-dollar movie post something so politically charged right as they were trying to win back the public? It sent shockwaves through the company. From that moment on, things got colder, quieter. Rachel's involvement in promotional material noticeably decreased. According to insiders, Disney made the decision to pull back, fearing that every new appearance would just add more fuel to the fire. It wasn't just bad optics, it was financial suicide. Analysts began warning that the Snow White remake might become one of Disney's biggest box office flops of all time. Merchandise pre-orders reportedly dropped, international distributors grew hesitant, and Disney shareholders furious. Behind the scenes, the mood turned dark. According to whispers in Burbank, senior execs started asking whether this was even salvageable. Could they still market this film? Could they pivot the messaging? Or was the whole thing just too far gone? Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly, who had been watching the whole debacle unfold, was preparing to speak out. And when she didn't hold back. Just when the chaos seemed to reach its peak, Megyn Kelly entered the ring. With her signature no-holds-barred delivery and sharp, unfiltered commentary, Megyn didn't just comment on the Snow White remake, she obliterated it. And she did it in a way that made headlines, racked up millions of views, and forced even the most loyal Disney defenders to sit up and pay attention. According to rumors, Kelly had been watching the drama build for months, tracking Rachel Zegler's interviews, noting the audience backlash, and reading between the lines of Disney's silent panic. And then, just when the PR nightmare was starting to boil over, she dropped a brutal truth bomb that echoed across the internet. In her now viral segment, Kelly torched Zegler's comments, calling them not just arrogant, but damaging. Her main target? Rachel's repeated criticism of the original Snow White story, especially the part where Rachel mocked the fairy tale romance, sneered at the idea of being rescued, and claimed that her version of Snow White wouldn't be dreaming about true love. And Megyn? She wasn't having any of it. This is not feminism, Kelly said. It's narcissism. It's ego disguised as empowerment, and it's hurting the very thing it claims to protect. The reaction was instant. Clips of her takedown spread like wildfire across social media. YouTubers reacted. Podcasters quoted her. Fans who had grown disillusioned with Disney suddenly had a new rallying cry. Megyn said what we were all thinking. And Kelly didn't stop there. She picked apart every piece of Rachel's media presence, her disdain for the original story, her condescending attitude toward fans of the classic, even her refusal to do proper promotion. All of it became ammunition. She got handed the lead role in one of the most iconic fairy tales of all time. Kelly snapped. And what did she do with it? She trashed it. She trashed the fans. She trashed the values behind the story. She even trashed the prince. But perhaps the most scathing part? Kelly accused Zegler of making it all about herself. She pointed out how Zegler's political posts, her ultra-modern stances, and her online feuds weren't helping the project. They were overshadowing it. The entire cast and crew poured months, even years into this film, Kelly added. And now no one's talking about their work. No one's talking about the sets, the costumes, the music. They're all talking about Rachel's rants. That's not empowerment. That's sabotage. It was a gut punch, and it echoed far beyond Kelly's audience. Even some Hollywood commentators, who normally steer clear of celebrity feuds, began cautiously agreeing. She makes some fair points. One industry blog wrote, Disney's remake has clearly lost its way. According to rumors, even within Disney's own walls, Kelly's segment caused waves. Executives were reportedly furious, not because she was wrong, but because the public was finally listening. Internally, some departments allegedly demanded that Zegler be reined in immediately. Others argued that it was too late, that the damage was already done, and Kelly had just confirmed what millions were already feeling. But what made Megyn Kelly's takedown so devastating wasn't just her delivery, it was the timing. She spoke out at the exact moment when the public had reached their limit, when Disney fans, already frustrated, already nostalgic, already exhausted, were desperate for someone to say what they couldn't. And Kelly's words? They lit a match that ignited the entire conversation and transformed a studio controversy into a cultural firestorm. From that point on, Rachel Zegler was no longer just a young actress in a controversial role. She had become a symbol of everything people felt was going wrong with Hollywood. And Megyn Kelly? She wasn't just a critic anymore. She was the voice of the backlash. While Megyn Kelly's viral takedown rattled the internet, What most people didn't realize was this: the real disaster wasn't just happening in front of the cameras, it was unfolding behind them. According to rumors, the Snow White remake had been in turmoil long before the public ever caught wind of the mess. And at the heart of it, Rachel Zegler's shocking behavior during production. Insiders whispered about explosive arguments with crew members, unprofessional walkouts during crucial photo shoots, and tensions so thick between Zegler and her co-stars, especially Gal Gadot, that it nearly shut down filming. Yes, Gal Gadot, the very same Hollywood A-lister known for her poise, grace, and keeping things professional no matter what. But according to whispers from people on set, even Gal couldn't hide her frustration as Zegler's attitude began spiraling out of control. Sources say the two barely spoke during production, often kept separate between scenes, and were even scheduled to promote the film on different days just to avoid any direct interaction. According to rumors, Gal allegedly refused to be in the same dressing room trailer area after an incident involving Zegler storming off when she didn't like a creative note. And it didn't stop there. Multiple leaks claim Zegler started skipping press events without notice. One shocking rumor alleges she walked out mid-photo shoot, throwing everyone's schedule into chaos, just because the creative direction didn't align with her empowerment vision. Producers reportedly tried everything, from softening scripts to giving Zegler more control over her messaging, but nothing worked. The tension only grew because Disney wasn't just dealing with a publicity crisis. They were staring at a billion-dollar brand implosion. And Megyn Kelly? She pointed it all out with brutal clarity. She said what insiders couldn't, that the chaos off-camera had ruined everything on camera, that the fans weren't rejecting Snow White, they were rejecting Rachel Zegler. According to rumors, even some executives began agreeing behind the scenes. One anonymous source claimed that upper management labeled the film unsalvageable, fearing it could tank harder than any previous Disney remake. The marketing team, rumors say they were in full panic mode, re-editing trailers, removing Zegler's sound bites, and shifting focus toward visuals rather than cast. Some fans noticed the trailers barely featured Zegler's face. Now we know why. Internally, the company was falling apart because what started as a modern reimagining of a beloved fairy tale had become a war zone, and Rachel Zegler was at the center of the storm. Megyn Kelly had simply taken all those whispers and turned them into a megaphone. At this point, the Snow White remake wasn't just a movie, it was a full-blown PR minefield. And right in the middle of it all, Rachel Zegler's social media. According to rumors, Disney was already walking on a tightrope with Zegler's public image. Her interviews had stirred backlash. Her behind-the-scenes behavior had become a liability. And now, her political activism was adding gasoline to the flames. It started subtly. Cryptic posts, hints at frustration, and bold statements about how she didn't need a prince to save her. But then it took a sharp turn. Shortly after Disney launched a major promotion for the Snow White film, complete with teaser trailers, press kits, and international rollout plans, Rachel Zegler posted something completely unexpected. A blunt political statement, one that had nothing to do with Snow White and everything to do with global politics. According to rumors, the timing couldn't have been worse. Executives were reportedly furious. Her post, which referenced the Free Palestine movement, ignited immediate backlash. The comment section exploded, debates raged, and just like that, Disney's carefully planned promotion was drowned out by controversy. But here's the wild part. This wasn't even the first time. Insiders say Rachel had a long history of posting politically charged content, often without consulting PR teams or considering the fallout. Her refusal to follow Disney's media strategy reportedly left publicists scrambling over and over again. One insider even claimed she was unfiltered and unapologetic, and Disney had no control. According to rumors, even high-ranking studio executives held emergency meetings after the post went viral. The backlash was immediate and intense. Some called it brave, others called it reckless. But for Disney, it was a nightmare. Because Snow White wasn't just a movie, it was a global family brand. One that needed to appeal to everyone, every parent, every kid, every culture. And now, it was being pulled into the most divisive political firestorms on social media. Megyn Kelly didn't hold back either. She ripped into Zegler's timing, calling it tone-deaf, provocative, and irresponsible. She argued that Rachel was more focused on turning Snow White into a personal soapbox than a successful film, and the numbers backed her up. Fan interest plummeted. Hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite and #FireRachelZegler started trending again. YouTube videos criticizing Zegler racked up millions of views. Even Disney fans, the loyal, multi-generational base the company depends on, began turning their backs. And the worst part? According to rumors, Zegler refused to back down. No apology, no clarification, nothing. In fact, some insiders say she doubled down behind closed doors, insisting that she had the right to use her platform, even if it clashed with Disney's goals. It was her brand, she argued, her truth. But Disney didn't see it that way. Executives, already burnt from weeks of PR disasters, reportedly began exploring ways to quietly distance the company from Zegler, even while she remained the lead of their film, a near impossible task. Rumors suggest they began planning new promos with minimal focus on her character. Early posters were allegedly redesigned. A few insiders say voiceover-heavy trailers were created specifically to avoid featuring Zegler's face or dialogue too heavily. They weren't promoting Snow White anymore. They were trying to survive it. And all the while, Megyn Kelly was unrelenting. She accused Zegler of hijacking a childhood fairy tale for her own agenda, transforming something magical into something messy. And in doing so, Kelly said, she had alienated every corner of Disney's core audience. The result? The film's box office projections took a nosedive. The public's trust was gone. And Rachel Zegler, the rising star who once had Hollywood in the palm of her hand, was now seen as one of the industry's most controversial figures. According to rumors, even internal Disney sources began calling the project radioactive. And all of this because of a single social media post. Well, not just one, but that one broke the floodgates. It was supposed to be a revolutionary take on a beloved classic. Disney had promised to bring Snow White into the 21st century with an empowering message of independence, self-sufficiency, and strength. But the moment Rachel Zegler opened her mouth and defined her version of empowerment, everything went off the rails. Now, according to rumors, Zegler's beliefs weren't exactly in line with the traditional fairy tale, and that's where the real trouble began. She made headlines again. But this time, it was for something far more controversial than her past comments or political activism. Zegler had been asked in a candid interview what she thought about Snow White's iconic love story with Prince Charming. Her response? It was a bold one. "I don't think she needs a prince," Zegler said. "In fact, I don't think a female character should ever be rescued by a man. She needs to save herself." This was a stark departure from the original tale, and while some might see it as a progressive, feminist message, many others saw it as a complete distortion of the classic story that generations had cherished. Now, according to rumors, Disney execs were caught off guard. They knew this Snow White remake would stir some controversy, sure, but they didn't anticipate that this version of Snow White would come across as angry, bitter, and downright ungrateful. It wasn't just a reinterpretation of Snow White's role in the story. It was a fundamental reworking of everything the fairy tale stood for. To add fuel to the fire, insiders say Zegler didn't stop there. Oh no, she continued to push her self-empowerment narrative, claiming that the character shouldn't fall in love at all. "Why is it always the woman's job to wait around for a man?" she allegedly asked during a roundtable discussion. And by the time that tidbit leaked to the press, the damage was done. Rumors swirled that Disney had considered reworking the script yet again. Allegedly discussed whether they should take a step back and revise Zegler's character to align more closely with the traditional romantic Snow White fans knew and loved. But that was impossible now. The damage was already done. According to insiders, Disney had already sunk so much into production and promotional material that they couldn't backpedal without appearing indecisive. A death sentence for a film that was already under so much scrutiny. Megyn Kelly tore into Zegler's feminist beliefs in an calling it feminism at its worst. "What Zegler doesn't get," Kelly said, "is that Snow White wasn't about needing a man. It was about finding love. It was about the beauty of kin. And now, because of this misguided empowerment push, we've lost something magical." And Kelly wasn't the only one who had issues with Zegler's portrayal of Snow White. According to insiders, fans who had been eagerly awaiting the film's release quickly grew disillusioned. The backlash was swift. Social media was flooded with comments calling Zegler's take patronizing, misguided, and out of touch with the original spirit of the story. Some even said she was trying to destroy Disney clicks with her modern-day agenda. To make matters worse, Zegler's stance didn't sit well with Disney's core audience. Snow White, after all, was a movie that generations of families had enjoyed together, and it was rooted in themes of love, friendship, and the power of unity. But now, the new Snow White being marketed as a feminist version of the story, and that alienated a large chunk of Disney's traditional family audience. Rumors say that behind the scenes, Disney was faced a dilemma. Their decision to champion Zegler's modern Snow White had backfired, big time. The marketing team scrambled to find ways to soften the narrative, but every attempt to course-correct came across as insincere. Fans were no longer interested in a Snow White that didn't fit their expectations. At the end of the day, this wasn't just a failed movie release. This was the unraveling of Disney's delicate balance between tradition and progress. By pushing forward with a feminist reimagination that was too far removed from the essence of the original Snow White, ended up alienating everyone. The Snow White remake, which was supposed to be a win for Disney, became a lesson in how not to handle a beloved franchise. And then came the inevitable box office failure. Zegler's fans are still vocal, but they are a niche group. And as for Disney, they're already focusing on the next big thing to get the bad taste of Snow White out of everyone's mouth. Rumors even suggest that Disney executives are already planning the next big live-action remake, one that won't dare to make the same mistakes. And there's Rachel Zegler's Snow White disaster. From behind-the-scenes drama to public relations chaos, Zegler's rewrite a timeless classic ended up being a fatal blow to Disney's remake. According to insiders, Disney's already learned its mistakes. But can Zegler ever recover from the backlash? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this Snow White disaster will be remembered for a long time. In an era where Disney's live-action are typically box office gold, Snow White's a disappointment. The combination of a divisive lead actress, a controversial narrative, and a fractured fan base was enough to tank the film's financial success. Rumors surfaced that Disney had lost hundreds of millions of dollars on the remake, a crushing blow for the studio, which had already been dealing with various controversies and financial struggles at the time. The public saw Zegler as the face of that failure. While Disney had tried to shift the blame in multiple directions, the media kept coming back to Zegler. Her outspoken behavior, her political posts, her refusal to fit into Disney's mold. They all added up to a single conclusion. She had sabotaged the movie. So, what now? Where does Zegler go from here? Well, according to rumors, Hollywood isn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for her anymore. Disney, in particular, is likely distancing itself from her. Executives are reportedly taking note of the Snow White backlash, and future projects with Zegler may be limited. Her reputation has taken a hit, and it's unclear whether she can come back from this debacle.